This week in the markets, we cover several USDA reports and hear from extension experts on insect pest issues in soybeans. But first, the numbers. Let's take a look. The week's biggest gain, lean hogs, up 5.5 cents, a near 7.5% increase from the previous week. The week's biggest loss, lumber, down 24 bucks, an over 4.5% decrease from the previous week. So, several USDA reports dropped recently, the cattle on feed report and the chicken and eggs report. These give us a good idea on how things look on a national level concerning livestock. Here's what they had to say.
In the cattle on feed report, cattle and calves on feed for the slaughter market totaled about 11 million head, slightly up from August last year. Placements in feedlots totaled over 1.5 million head, 6% up from last year. Marketings of fed cattle during July was about 2 million head, 8% up from last year. Other disappearance totaled 56,000 head, up 14%. In the chicken and eggs report, U.S. egg production totaled over 9 billion in July this year, down 2% from last year. Total egg-laying chickens totaled 369 million, down 3% from last year. Egg lay rate per day averaged 79 eggs per 100 layers, up slightly from last year. Egg-type chicks hatched during July this year, up 12%. Eggs in incubators totaled about 54 million, up 10%. Broiler-type chicks hatched during July this year totaled 863 million, up 2% from last year. Eggs in incubators totaled 746 million, up 3%.
In row crops, many challenges facing the producer, especially this year. Commodity prices chief among them. However, insect pests also an issue, and in soybeans we've seen two particular pests rear their heads, the soybean looper and the kudzu bug. Extension entomologist Dr. Don Cook recently appeared on the Mississippi Crop Situation podcast to give advice on how to treat them.
Right now we're dealing with lots of loopers. Loopers are everywhere. I've had folks say that this is the most loopers they've seen in 3 or 4 years. And they're probably at least 7 to 10 days earlier than we've normally seen them. When we had that big blow up in 22, we're probably 2 weeks ahead of that. They were just now starting that year and blew and then continue. But right now it's wide open. And we've got beans in every stage imaginable, from ones that, have already been desiccated to some that folks are not worried about the loopers out there because they're going to desiccate them in the next 3 days, to stuff that's just past R2. As you would expect, the things that have the most time have the potential for the greatest impact from them.
What's our threshold for action on loopers?
We have a number threshold and we have a defoliation threshold, and I personally use a combination of the two. It's 19 per 25 sweeps of greater than 1/2 inch, or 20% defoliation, during the flowering period or in the reproductive period. And I personally use a combination of the two, because if you've got, insects, and say you've got, 25, but you're at, 10% defoliation and you're 5, 6, 7 days from R6.5, I'm going to probably tell you to let them ride, because the defoliation is probably not going to exceed 20% before they hit R6.5. So it's very situational dependent. Now, if we're at R5.5, I'm going to say you probably can ride them for a week, but you're going to have to deal with them unless they crash. Loopers are non-native. They're a tropical insect. They do not overwinter here. They have to migrate in. And to me, what seems to trigger certain environmental conditions, which up until last year, we always said if it gets cool, we get a cold front, temperature gets down, usually in like mid to low 60s at night, it's a stress, makes them more susceptible. Last year, I saw it with those really high temperatures we saw in August. I'd never seen that before, so I think it's just stress on the insects from environmental conditions make them more susceptible. Everybody's hopeful, but I have not seen the first disease looper yet.
Now we're jumping back and forth between these two insects, but then what's your threshold for kudzu bugs?
It is 25 nymphs per 25 sweeps, so 1 nymph per sweep. And the reason is it's based on nymphs. You get this big adult migration. There's only like, 2 generations a year?
Yeah.
You get these adults coming out, and if you spray them too early, and they're not going to just take the crop, the next thing you know, they're reinfesting. So when nymphs start showing up, that means that adult movement is over, and usually you can get by with 1 application should you need it and be done with it.
So when you have nymphs, you're in that second of the 2 generations per year.
Yeah, and that adult movement is pretty much over with. So you're not going to get another big slug of adults coming like the next week.
And kill the second generation before they get to be adults.
Like I said, it's very situational dependent. They're like aphids and cotton or something like that. If you got really good growing beans, you can ride them a long time and let them ride till you had to deal with stink bugs because they really weren't hurting the beans. If you're close enough to maturity, just let them go. I've seen folks who've done that. This year, with nobody really wants to spend money because they've already spent a lot. So there's probably more stuff being let go this year than I've seen in a while.